In today's video, we're going to be diving into the upcoming pattern, taking a look at the tropics, some overall storminess in the United States. We have a lot of storms out west, and we also have some coastal systems which could be tropical, could not be, but still could bring rainfall to the east coast. And among that, we have other cold fronts that'll bring some precipitation eastward as well as those big cool downs, multiple of them coming up over the next couple of weeks. So let's go ahead and dive into things. We'll briefly touch here on the tropics. We do have this area here, which now has a 40% chance of development over the next 2 days and a 70% chance of development over the next 7 days, which brings it to a overall chance of high chance of development. We can see on this GFS model, it does curve out to sea still, so that is still the current guidance that we're seeing is some sort of curvature right as it's reaching towards that Eastern Caribbean area. Let's go ahead and take a look at the spaghetti model guidance for this one, and we're going to look again at the Google DeepMind model, and it does agree generally with all the other models, so this isn't some sort of outlier. It's a good thing to look at, and again, this model has been really, really impressive, which is the reason why I keep talking about it. We can see, again, that curvature just before it's arriving towards the Eastern Caribbean. This one could obviously change. It could strike into this area. It could even not curve. We don't know for sure yet, but this curve is a good sign. And it also goes along with the recent history of a lot of our tropical cyclones this year that want to just kind of curve out to sea. So I would say that this is a highly likely outcome, but there is definitely other possibilities. And that is going to become a lot clearer as this thing develops and we get better data from the actual storm itself, and being able to input those into the models is going to help a lot. So we're going to uncover a lot over the next few days, but hopefully it just continues to look like this, because this is a very low impact type track. So this would be incredible news. Let's go ahead and take a look at the past 5 days of temperatures. So the first 5 days of October, we've had cooler temperatures along the west coast, which acts as a negative PNA. All that means is the cooler temperatures in this area. And when that happens, you see warmer temperatures prevail to the east of this area, which we have seen. Because this is a very west-based negative PNA, so it's essentially just for that immediate western area. It's not encompassing like the Rockies or anything, so it's not very widespread. This has been enough for some cooler air to sneak down the east coast, where we've had neutral to below average temperatures for the time being over the past 5 days. Let's go ahead and dive into the storminess, though, and again, there's going to be some very interesting systems that do pop up on this. Multiple lows like this one here that we see over South Dakota currently. Rocky Mountain snowfall is going to be hugely upticked from even yesterday's video, so we're going to see a lot more of that on today's model run. And we're going to go over, of course, the European model and the GFS model on the temperatures. The European model does have the cooldowns. The GFS model is a lot more extreme with them, and it's a lot more classic as far as warm out west and that colder air just blasting into the eastern states. The European model is going to be a little bit more mild with it, still average to below average temperatures, just a lot less on the extreme end. Looking at the features of this low immediately for today, we do see this warm front, very clearly high precipitation, and we do see a higher precipitation cold front developing here. So you can really get an idea of the structure of this overall very dynamic system. Very dry throughout the eastern states to the east of this low, unless you're along the immediate Gulf Coast or the southeast coast here, where there is some precipitation. As we keep going with this, towards the afternoon, we see by this afternoon and evening time, this low is going to be between the Hudson Bay and the Great Lakes there, which is a pretty prime area, especially when you have the cold front dipping down, for this to bring cooler air eastward. Still seeing some snowfall for some of the Rockies, so it's just going to be a snowy day, and we actually start to get a lot more of this deep southeast precipitation going by this evening. We also notice a little bit of warming occurring along the west coast, and that's going to help to basically wave this cool down along. It's going to be quickly moving, but it is going to impact pretty much a lot of the north central and northeastern states. Even by Monday afternoon, tomorrow, we do see this cold front still around. Might be a little stationary, but it's definitely, bringing cooler air behind it. We can tell that there is warmer, humid air lifting out ahead of it, which is very classic for these stronger cold fronts, especially in the spring and fall. We've got the cold front moving in. So that's your overall dynamics. Out west, warmer temperatures are building even further here by this point. I want to keep going towards Tuesday on the 7th, and we can see this frontal boundary is continuing to trek along, moving into this area, and it's relatively high precipitation. This brings up the activity in these eastern areas, and they really, really need it overall. Looking at the jet stream, there is clearly a ridge trough pattern going on. It's just not the most extreme. Again, this trough is not dipping super far to the south, and you can imagine that areas in here are cooled, but along the frontal boundary, and especially to the east of it, you have not seen those cool temperatures move in yet. So that's Tuesday afternoon on the 7th. By Wednesday the 8th, we do see a pretty clear-cut ridge in the west, trough in the east pattern taking hold for a lot of these areas. Again, the immediate deep southeast still hasn't seen that cool front roll through, so you are still dealing with milder temperatures. But for everywhere to the north of that precipitation and the west of that precipitation, you have now seen a much crisper day on Wednesday as opposed to Tuesday. Again, high precipitation still around for these deeper south areas. As we keep going again towards Thursday the 9th, that precipitation is stalling, but it is lower overall. So still dealing with some cooler temperatures in the east as opposed to the west by Thursday the 9th. Precipitation still in that deep southeast area. And then by Friday the 10th, this is when we start to see some low pressure trying to form along what was that frontal boundary. And again, this could come in the form of a milder tropical system or perhaps a non-tropical system. Either way, this thing lingers and it brings more long-term precipitation to these areas, especially North Carolina and Virginia, and maybe even into the Mid-Atlantic. These areas will see more precipitation as a result of this. Florida really never struggles to see precipitation almost, and this is not an exception. They've been seeing it for a few days here. Saturday the 11th, we see this low, pretty well offshore, but still bringing some showery activity along. Again, that mid-Atlantic and northern southeast coast. Still impressively by this point, we have a trough in the northwest, ridge just to the east of it, and then we still have a deep diving trough in the east. It's just not bringing severe cold in. So these areas would generally probably be around typical to slightly below normal temperatures, but a larger area is what you can anticipate. With all this waviness in the jet stream out west, you actually do end up with a lot of low pressure, a lot of storminess, and a lot of snowfall for the higher elevations overall. Sunday here, we see things changing in a hurry. More low pressure and storminess still around for that southeast area by this Sunday, the 12th time frame. We have a strong low in Saskatchewan. I think that's what that is. We do see more of a trough in the west underneath this, and then a ridge just to the east of that low, which is really, really classic. So again, warmer air really moving northward over the southern or the central states, and then very Arctic air trying to move into the northwest corner of the nation behind the cold front developed by that system. So there's a lot going on. In the northwest sees a lot of rainfall, and for the higher elevations, a lot of snowfall, as well as a lot of areas there in, I think that's Alberta now, a lot of snowfall occurring there just to the west of that low. As we move towards Monday, we see that cooler pattern out west continue, and an overall lifting pattern in the east trying to get going. But you notice a lot of your energy, a lot of your jet stream is moving that way. We do still see some dippage happening underneath as well. So there's a big spread, which is going to mean that the temperatures up here are probably pretty similar to the areas down here. It's just going to bring a pretty stable environment. Where this low is, there is cooler temperatures around that low. Lots of precipitation here on this model run for South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia. Still by Monday the 13th, so an overall stormy pattern. And this is within the medium range, so there is quite a bit of confidence in something like this potentially taking place. We're going to have to keep monitoring it, though. But this could be promising for precipitation for some of these areas that do sort of need it. Not as bad as areas in the northeast or in the deep south, but these areas as well do kind of need it, like I said. The Midwest seeing precipitation as well by this Tuesday the 14th time frame, and the Northwest continues to see a lot of activity, including snowfall there for some of these areas, especially in the high elevations. As we just keep going, Wednesday the 15th here, a low starts to form over eastern Colorado. We have a trough behind this one. Overall, a ridge now clearly in the east. So again, normal to above normal temperatures for most of the central and eastern states by this time frame. Below normal temperatures prevailing here in this northwest corner of the nation. and just a lot of activity across a lot of your central and western states as a whole, including a whole lot of snowfall happening by this Wednesday the 15th time frame. Looking towards, this will be Thursday the 16th, the system gets a lot more dynamic. Between Wisconsin and Minnesota, we clearly have a cold front. We clearly have a warm front that's trying to get going. So again, before that cold strikes, you do see much milder temperatures prevail for a day or two, which is, again, going to be fairly typical. Another dynamic that is developing is, once again, we have a warming trend there along the immediate west coast. So this cooler air that's moving in is likely, as it's getting kind of pushed by this warmth, it's going to be forced eastward once again for the most part. So as we move towards Friday, we see this cold front really advancing. The low is all the way up by the Hudson Bay, but we have a clear cold front all the way down to the Gulf Coast. Precipitation all along that for the most part. And we have a building area of warmth right here, which should keep shooting this cooler air eastward here. The northwest remains quite cold, however, and quite stormy. So this isn't a warm pattern out west that's stretching way up into Canada by any means. It's mostly for the southwest and Four Corner states. The northwest is continuing to see storminess and continuing to see high elevation snowfall once again. As we keep going towards Saturday, that cold front moves past the east coast, and it honestly lifts off a little bit as it's moving fully eastward. So we do see cooler temperatures than the days prior, but it doesn't really like smash into this area with severe cold air in this instance. Saturday the 18th, another low starts to get going east of Colorado, and we see a ton of Rocky Mountain snowfall out ahead of this thing. And it looks like this one wants to for a moment develop into a very similar dynamic low up here to the north, clearly trying to get a warm front cold front situation going. So this would once again pull that Arctic air eastward. Again, we even got the warmer air trending here. So we have all the setup, even the warmer air for the west coast getting going again. But by the next frame, we see the energy begin to transfer southward to this, what once was a secondary low, but becoming the primary low way to the south. And we end up with southern Rocky Mountain snowfall like Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, Utah really seeing the brunt of it by Sunday the 19th. This is very far out, so take it with a grain of salt, but all of the activity out ahead of it as well would be quite intense. Could expect thunderstorms, heavy showers, even severe weather in some of these areas with a storm to this extent. And it really gets going around maybe even the Texas-Mexico border down here, the low, and you see just a ton of precipitation to the north of it. Again, New Mexico, Colorado, snowfall, and a lot of the southern plains, kind of like the lower Midwest and deep south, seeing heavier thunderstorms as a result of that system at the end of this model run. It's important to note that we really see a building positive PNA again on this particular model run, and it's very likely that this colder air would be heading eastward for the days following this. Although what we can't know is if this exact situation that we're looking at here is even going to unfold in the first place. All I can kind of tell you is what would probably follow this if it even happens. And when you're looking at hours 360, there's some huge question marks there. Looking at the total precipitation, it is still quite messy, but I would say the Rockies and Northwest are the most upticked for sure. They're seeing a lot more. Midwest and parts of the plains seeing a lot. And also areas along this East Coast area starting to improve a little bit. So let's look at the anomalies real quickly. And sure enough, I mean, this Northwest into the Rockies area, flourishing, plains and Midwest, really seeing above average precipitation. We are quite drier throughout a lot of the East, but the bright spot is kind of the Carolinas into Virginia here. If we get that more coastal storm setup, it could mean more precipitation to some of these areas. Total snowfall is massively upticked, as we mentioned earlier, for the Cascades and the Rockies, dealing with maybe not inches, but feet of snowfall in some of these mountain range areas. Historically speaking, you could expect the highest amounts to be the most probable for areas here in northwestern Wyoming, probably, as well as southern Montana. I'd say for this early in the season, these northern Rocky areas are obviously going to be the most likely to cash in on a ton. But this particular model run says, hey, look, the Colorado Rockies are also going to cash in, which isn't unheard of for this season. It's just less likely this early on, but still very, very possible. So this is really impressive. European temperatures here, I should say European model temperatures, is obviously the United States temperatures, are warmer for the time being in the east with cooler out west, but we see our first cool down here for midweek. Here's Wednesday the 8th, Thursday the 9th, and look at that. A lot of the eastern states dealing with pretty far below normal temperatures for this Wednesday, Thursday, maybe even Friday, and even some of Saturday time frame before we warm back up in the east and cool down in the west. But this is when the next cool down starts to move through. A lot milder, but we do again end up with widespread, kind of slightly below average temperatures in the east. The problem is that we immediately see the cooler air rebound in the west, which is going to make this very, very short-lived on this model run. And then it's basically said and done. But we have this massive trough that is moving eastward, and things are getting milder along the west coast. So there's a strong case for this to move eastward from this point if we saw this take place. But again, the GFS model here is going to be quite a bit different. So let's watch this one play out, where the first cooldown is perhaps more intense than the European model, although it's very, very close. So again, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then it starts to come to an end. We do see the East Coast hang on to some of that cooler air for a lot longer on this model run. And then we see a very different outcome here. Thursday the 16th, we get another major cooldown in the east from Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then we get a third one where the European model wants to take this one directly southward. The GFS model has a similar air mass. It just brings it eastward in a more classic sense. So that is going to be a massive difference, especially, well, for everybody, because if you're in the west and this occurs as opposed to the European model, you're going to be way warmer. And if this happens for the east compared to the European model, you're going to be way colder for the kind of long term on these models. So we'll see if they continue to show these frequent cold shots, whether they're in the west or the east. There's no denying that both of these models have frequent cold shots moving in. We are moving into a negative NAO, which would help to support this type of cooldown moving in. Especially if it moves into the east, it would help it to be a little extra potent. We'll have to wait and see. This is obviously long out, but even in the short range, we are fairly confident in obviously this cooldown just in the next few days. A little bit of a milder pattern to set up, and then it seems like maybe in the long range we have one or two more major ones moving in. So that is the way I see the upcoming pattern. Be sure to subscribe because we'll be going over it daily. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it, leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.